Good evening to all those lifelong learners out there. The book Ian Mann will be reviewing this evening is Great at Work by Morten T. Hansen. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
Great to have you on board this evening.
Nice to be with you always.
Super. So, Ian, I had a quick squiz at this book on the Amazon page, and I just thought, that's interesting. So you've read it. So why are
Yes.
some people more successful at work than others?
Well, there's lots of, you can just Google and it'll tell you how to be more successful at work, the 15 ways to be more successful, how I became more successful. It's all other nonsense. The fact is, this is an academic book. Hansen teaches it, when he wrote the book, he was teaching at Stanford. He's probably done the most comprehensive research projects ever done on individual performance. What he did first, just to give you a sense of how serious he is about his work, he first did in-depth interviews with about 120 professionals to find out what are the issues, what are the psychological issues one would have to worry about if we're trying to work out how to do better at work. Then what he did was a pilot study on 300 people. Now that's a big pilot study. It's
Absolutely.
a big study anyway. But his real study was only used as a framework. His real study was on 5,000 managers and employees.
Sure.
The question he wanted to know is, why are some people better than others? Now, generally we say, well, I think in any workplace, you always look at other people and you say to them, they're so much better than me. Is it because they have more time than I have? I have a family, I'm busy all the time, I'm doing stuff. Is it because they spend more time at work? Is it because they've naturally got more talent? And then you meet those people who don't seem to be putting in longer hours than you. You seem to be putting in all the hours that they do. And you've no idea whether there's nothing indicating that they're that much brighter than you, that they should be twice as successful as you are. So the real question I think people come across all the time is why is it that some people are better than others? And I think if you look across industries, you look across age groups, you look across gender, education, it doesn't seem to be anything like that makes people better. I've met people who are superb, certainly.
Okay.
Whether they are smarter than me, and then you look at it and say, what are the dimensions that make it happen? And this book is one of those books that really gives you some solid guidance as to what this is really all about. He's got 7 different factors that he says really show how this works.
Okay, so let's find out. Is the one more important to the other, or do you have to have them all running in parallel?
No, I don't think you need them in any particular order. He just revealed this through his work. Let me just show you one of the things which I think is really important. If you want to leap into the 75th percentile, that's you're better, equal to or better than 75% of all of your others, all the other people around you. There are a couple of things that you have to do. And there are some things which affect your performance more than others. Now, one of the issues that people tend to get caught up in is the complexity trap. We seem to make things over complex, and we've got so much to do, and then we get so caught up in all these things that we have to do that we never actually get to doing our chosen tasks and produce huge quality work. Clearly, you've got to be working smarter. And one of the things that he talks about, is a tool that he saw come up a lot. And that was do less. Do less. There's so much work that you can do. Try and do a whole lot less. But the thing is that when you do less work, the key is to set a tiny set of priorities. Work out what are the things that will make all the real difference. For example, I cannot tell you how many people I know, especially those who work for multinationals, get a call from Brussels and says, you've got to finish this work for us now. We need this automatically. Do it right away. And you drop everything you're doing and then you send the report. And then you ask yourself the question afterwards, has anybody ever read that? Yeah. And the fact is, you probably will find that you can become extraordinarily busy doing stuff, but it's not going to move the needle. The challenge is to try and work out what's the few things that you could do that are real priorities, and then genuinely excel in just those things and become and obsess about them. Alfred Hitchcock, he required, I don't know if you saw Psycho. I mean, everybody had to see Psycho.
Yeah.
Did you see Psycho? Remember that scene in the shower? The scene in the shower with, okay. Alfred Hitchcock redid that bit over 70 times. 70 times. There's a really experienced, brilliant producer, and he did 70 times just to get absolutely bloody perfect.
And that he did.
Yeah, he did. And James Dyson,
yes.
who developed the if you haven't got a Dyson vacuum cleaner, you have to have one. They're the difference between a horse and cart and a motor car in terms of how effective it is. Now, James Dyson created 5,000 prototypes of his vacuum cleaner before he launched it. The key is to find out what is the thing you can do, and then when you can do it, just absolutely, totally obsess about it until you get it really right. I think that there was a friar whose name was Philip William of Oakham, and in Europe 700 years ago, and he developed a principle called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is this: when you're looking, he was obviously interested in philosophy of religion, but he said if you can pare activities down to the simplest form, make it as simple as possible. You can talk about how's the world come back, and you come up with big theories about God and angels. He says, pare everything down to the simplest form, but no simpler. Try and get things down to the simplest form, but no simpler than that. If you can get all the work that you have to do, of all the work I have to do, what is the single most important thing that if I did magnificently would overshadow everything, all the busy work I can get involved in. So the challenge there is do less and obsess, and get down to the essence of things and get rid of all the mindless stuff that you don't have to do. People who focus on the most important things and get really good at it find that they don't have to work as much as other people. And when you pare things down using Occam's razor, when you pare it down to its simplest form, you probably find that you can do those things quite well, because you find ways of doing them better than others would do. And it's trying to get to that. I don't know if you remember when Gladwell wrote a book which popularized this idea of 10,000 hours. I don't know if you came across that.
Yeah.
Now, the 10,000 hours was taken from a Viennese music school, where they found that to get into the Viennese music school, you had to be brilliant. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be there. But they found that those who really excelled in the school really excelled because they spent 10,000 hours more than all the others in doing the stuff. Now, this activity of doing we heard about the 10,000 hours. If you look deeper into the study, you'll find that it wasn't just any 10,000 hours. It was working on, and it works best on anything that has to do with a fixed rule structure, like playing music. Where if you practice over and over and over, you get better and better. Two examples he used in his book. One was Tiger Woods with golf, and the other one was musicians. Now, those are things that if you do over and over again, you can perfect.
Yeah, your body learns it.
Absolutely. But how do you perfect your management ability?
Yeah, I know, because you never have the same experience over and over again. It's all situational.
Indeed. And one of the things that you probably should be doing in situations like that is try and find the parts of your responsibilities that you can get rid of. That's part of Occam's razor. Get rid of everything that's not really important and just focus on the most important parts. If you think of what people do as a manager or even as an employee, they're doing so many different things. And if you had to say to them, you're leaving town in 12 hours and you've got to leave your department behind in the best condition, which gives you just over 1.5 days to do it in. What would be the things that are the most important things that you have to do? And you'd be astounded how many things you just don't have to do. You don't have to look at mindless stuff. You don't have to have unnecessary meetings. You don't have to meet. You have to do things that just add no value at all. The whole thing about this Occam's razor is par down your work down to the most important parts that you actually can manage, and that'll really make the biggest difference to your career. And that's what you should be focusing in on.
Sure. It's something that we also do when we speak to people. Often we sort of like say, okay, fine. If you had to take a ruler that went from 0 to 10, and there's an issue that you need to sort out, where are you sitting? Are you sitting on a 5 or a 7?
Yes.
And then we kind of like say, okay, who can really fix this? Allocate somebody to it, and then say, what do you need to do to get from 5 to 7? And is that ruler a higher priority than another one? And it's actually interesting just getting them to sort their minds out, so I can understand where he's coming from. Because I think you get so caught up in this whirlwind of busyness that you completely lose yourself.
Don't you just? And it's so easy to get sucked into the whirlwind of busyness.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
The number, in his study, what he did was he asked managers about who are the most successful people. He asked people who are the most successful managers. He asked colleagues who are the most. So he had 5,000 people that he was looking at. The ones that really seemed to make the difference were people, for example, they're obsessed. They worked out how they could do less and then obsess about it. But the most important thing is obsessing about it. So if you realize that the most important thing in my department is motivating my sales staff, just that much, then don't worry about the other stuff. Just focus all your attention on just doing that and obsess about that to get really, really good at it. And obsession in management isn't the same as obsession in music. You can't just practice the same skill over and over, but you can get better at things. And I think that's what he's really after. That just puts you in a much higher percentile than the other people in your workspace.
Okay, great. So what's number 2?
Well, that was number 1 and number 2. Here's a third one.
Okay.
He talks about passion and purpose. Now, I want you to think about this. We often hear Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was giving a talk, I think it was at the Stanford graduation, and she talked about having passion for your work. It's so important to have passion for your work. Now, that having passion for your work and harnessing the power of your passion as the key to success is extremely bad advice. And if you have any doubts as to whether that is bad advice or not, ask any out-of-work actor.
Sure.
They've got passion for it, and they're totally obsessed about becoming an actress or an actor, and they're waiting tables. The passion is not as important. We've got to be very, very careful that you don't. Well, on the one hand, you don't want to ignore your passion. I mean, if you ignore your passion, that isn't very great either. You can imagine if your job was like the Greek character Sisyphus. Sisyphus in Greek mythology was a man who'd really, really irritated the gods. And they decided to punish him with the most severe punishment they could give a human being. Now, if you killed a human being, he's dead. So that's not punishment, that's quick. So what they did was they made him roll a boulder up the side of a mountain. And it's a heavy boulder, so it required an enormous amount of effort. He had to roll the boulder to the top. When he got to the top, he released the boulder went down to the bottom, he went down to the bottom and pushed it up again. Mindless, meaningless, repetitive work.
Okay, now, I get it.
The opposite of ignoring your passion isn't great. I mean, Sisyphus is the extreme example. So we've got to get some sense about where this whole thing fits in and what's it all about. What he did was he firstly, I think, defines passion and purpose in a nice way. Passion is doing what you love, and purpose is doing what contributes to other people. So when I say that this is my passion, it's what I love to do. It's not always a good idea to go into any career that you love to do. But what is important is for you to try and find passion and purpose in what you're doing. What he found was that if you have passion and purpose for your work, you're 18 percentile points above those people who lack either or both. Okay. So the quality of your work will go up enormously if you only can have passion and purpose. And this is based on stats from 5,000 people and matching them with people who have passion and purpose and people who don't, or have one or don't have the other. So other thing I think which is important, he said across all the industries he studied, he said in nearly every industry or occupation, the reports showed that people everywhere had a minimum in any context of 11% of people who worked with passion and purpose. So I'd like to just give
That's
you an
low.
example of a minimum of 11. Imagine you're a zookeeper, and we're not talking about the man with a PhD in zoology. We talk about the man who shovels elephant dung out of the cage and brings some food in and does that all day. And you said to him, how do you enjoy your job? He says, my job is dirty, filthy, and degrading, and it's poorly paid. And we say, where can the passion and purpose be? He reports a study that was done in 2009 of about 200 zookeepers, people who do those sort of work. He said in that group, he found people who said, and they're cleaning cages, right? Who said, I love animals, and I really, really want city dwellers to have the exposure to animals and just be able to see animals, not in the wild because they will never get there, but at least to be able to sit and watch these beautiful creatures. And if we love them and we bring them into our cities, we have got to protect them and we've got to provide proper care for them. And my job is I see to it that their cages are clean and they always have food. That's passion and purpose. The purpose is what I'm giving to the world, and that is I'm sharing my love of animals with kids and parents and families. And my passions, what I get out of it, is I love doing this stuff. So the challenge is to try and, now I think this is really an important point. I don't know how many people actually go out of their way to try and get their staff to understand the purpose of their work. I would suggest that an enormous number of people come to work every day and say, why do you come to work? You say, because I've got to pay the bills. And what's your work for? I move paper around. But there are people who, when somebody gets to a stage where they say, I know what I'm doing, and I really, really like this. When you get people to do that, it completely changes the game. One of the things based on this, I must tell you, one of the things I've instituted in our tracing company, which is basically people sitting at desks and phoning other people, trying to find them, and then when you found them, you were able to see to that they get the entitlements that nobody has found for them yet, and we're getting money back to these people. One of the things I did, because that work can be very mindless, very meaningless, and very, very not only tedious, but hard work. You struggle to find people. And we've got on everybody's desk, what are we trying to do? Get money to the people it belongs to. So there's nobody in the group who hasn't got that on their desk, and there's never a meeting where that's not repeated. What are we trying to do? Get money to the people it belongs to. Because when I say that, I come to work every morning, and what are you trying to do? So I'm trying to get money back to the people it belongs to. They haven't been able to get it up to now, and I'm going to make it. Once you give somebody purpose, once you give them purpose, very often the passion will follow afterwards. And I think that's important. It's much easier to start with purpose and get to passion than it is to start with passion and try and get to purpose.
Sure. I also find that in a lot of organizations, they have a purpose statement, but it's not cascaded to be relevant to the individual. They can't see how what they do helps deliver on the organizational purpose. And I saw a video quite recently, and I've been sharing it with others. It was a Formula One video.
Yes.
And they were interviewing these people who were building the car, I suppose the mechanics. And something that struck me is that they were speaking to the guy who did the exhaust. And he said, this is the most important part of the car. It has to be able to do this, and without this, they will never win a race. And that's my purpose, to make sure they win the race. And then they spoke to the guy who did the tires, and he said, if these tires don't attach to the ground, they will never win the race. And my job is the most important job. Otherwise, they'll never win the race.
They understand the purpose. The purpose
Yes,
is very clear. This
absolutely.
car's got to win the race. And what's my
Absolutely.
passion? I'm playing my part in that. If it wasn't for me, the car
Exactly.
would skill off the track. But it's fantastic. But
Such
be
a
able to
stunning
get your,
video.
it's a beautiful one, beautiful
Yes.
one. But I think that the point
Cool.
of this is, if we're going to get people to work well, we've got to worry about this. Let me just share one more with you, which I think is really, really
Sure.
important. One of the ones that he talks about, his chapter is headed "Fight and Unite." Let me give you the background to how he discovered that.
Okay.
He was interested in finding out who are the top 2,000 CEOs on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way that you do that is he was doing this in 1995. He wanted to find out who are the best in the world. What you do is you go to the stock exchanges. These are all public companies, so you can find lots of information about them. You have a look at what the company is worth when the CEO joined. You have a look what it's worth now. And you see whether this particular CEO made any difference to his company at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to find who are the top 2,000. It's not too hard because many stock exchanges, not unlike ours, have got way beyond more than 2,000 alone. He was looking at a worldwide study. So he got his students to do this. He said he was really excited to get the results. And he looked at these, the top 10%, which is the top 1%. That's the top 20 people. That's where he started. And he says it was an absolute yawn. It was just the usual culprits, Steve Jobs, Gates, whoever it was, just the usual people who are up there.
It's like whenever you talk branding, it's always Coke and Nike.
I know. Yeah, it's enough already. Yeah. He said he gets to number 16. And he looked at this and he couldn't work out. First, he'd never heard of the company. It's a British company. He certainly never heard of the CEO. Number 16. Okay. That means that he was in the top 1% of companies. He was number 16, in the top 1% of successful CEOs on planet Earth. He said he had to Google what the company is called Rickett Benkiser. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rickett Benkiser.
No.
They make things like floor polish. It's a British company.
Okay.
And he was rated among the top 1% of CEOs on the planet. He says, this is extraordinary. So he said, we've got to go and visit this guy. They work out of Britain. And he goes to see them and he said to them, what is it that you do that makes this place so remarkable?
Okay.
And the man said to him, I think that the most important thing that we do is the way that we run our meetings. He says, I really believe that we get superb performance out of our guys. And we do that because of how we run meetings so well. And he said, well, what's the difference? I mean, meetings are boring as anything. I think most people would prefer to watch paint dry than to attend most meetings.
Absolutely.
And the Harris poll, they had a Harris poll of 2,000 employees, half of whom said they would prefer to do absolutely anything except go to a status meeting. And the worldwide surveys have told that 69% of a worldwide survey said people come up and said, our meetings are not productive. How's it that a man who becomes in the top 1% of successful CEOs says that the reason for that is because I have good meetings? And so it's fair. So they said we have to see these meetings. The meetings are based around two ideas: fight and unite. He says we encourage constructive conflict. He says we don't mind if you scream or swear. It's fine. Scream or swear, we don't mind at all. So when you get into a meeting, when you show up at a meeting, you show up 100%. Whatever the meeting agenda is about, you better craft an opinion on that, because you're going to have to deliver that opinion with real conviction and data. So you go and come into a meeting and sit there like half asleep and looking at your emails or doing your Facebook or sending WhatsApp messages. You come into that meeting really prepared, because everybody in that meeting is there because we want to hear what you want to say. We don't want people to say, sure, of course, yes, I agree with that. So you tell me why you agree with that. And you better you better have some really, really good points. And their opinion is the best argument will win. And people understand that the best argument will win, even if it isn't yours, and often isn't yours. But you're going to see to it that you're going to argue as hardly and as vigorously and as intelligently as you possibly can. He says, feel free to stand up and shout. We don't mind. Only thing you don't do is you never make the argument personal. And when you listen to the other people, when they're arguing, you listen. Not just listen, but you really, really listen. You listen to minority views, you look at whatever's going on, and you certainly don't pursue a consensus for its own sake. You fight until the end. And he says, if it's ever hung a group because there's equal number of people saying yes and no, he says, as the chairman, I'll make a call, and then we'll do it. So that's one part. Second part, he said, is so we fight like mad in meetings, argue, rip things apart. The second thing we do is, as we walk out that meeting, we unite. So when you leave the meeting, you don't look at your staff member and say, I didn't believe in that stuff, but I didn't win my argument. You walk out the room and everybody in that room is totally 100% committed to the idea that you all agree to, or that half the people agree to. And he says our key is fight and unite. And he said we never leave without a decision. We fight. The meeting does not end until there's a decision. And he recalls a meeting that they had, or somebody reported a meeting that they had with their counterparts in France. People come from all over Europe to this meeting, top guys. And at the meeting, at one point, one of the senior people from the other team said, listen, we're going to have to wrap things up because the guys are going to have to leave in half an hour to catch a plane to get back to their respective countries. So CEO Brecht says, half an hour. He says, yeah, half an hour. It's no problem at all. He walked to the door, locked the door with the key, put the key in the pocket, and he says, nobody's leaving here without a decision. And people you will stay till the end of the meeting, doesn't matter how long it is, until nobody has anything else to say. And then we'll come to a consensus and we'll agree that the majority rules, and that's what's going to be. He says that's what made him in the top 1% of CEOs on planet Earth. Yeah.
Well, that's a bit different. I think in a lot of cases, people don't prepare for meetings. And because they don't prepare, if there's any fighting going on, it always is fighting the person, not the issue.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. If you can manage that, then I think his philosophy is quite
something,
sound.
isn't it? It's really good. Yeah. And I think that it becomes the culture of the place when somebody would be embarrassed. If after meetings you weren't prepared, you made a fool of yourself.
Exactly.
And because that, you probably wouldn't be on the top team anyway.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. It's really a selection process, and we need to hold people to a high standard. And I think they don't always do that. I think that's an issue.
One of the things I found with clients, when I said to them, how much does a meeting cost? They say it's free because we're having a meeting and I'm bored. We said, no, it's not free. You look around, if you want to know how much it costs, take the total cost of company of anybody in the team. So whatever they earn, divide it by 2,000. And that's how many hours on average people work a year. So take their gross annual salary, gross cost to company, because it's the secretaries, it's the cards, the holidays, anything else they're entitled to, and divide that by 2,000, and you'll be quite surprised at exactly how much a meeting costs, and then multiply it by the 2 hours or so that you are spending on the meeting. When you look at that, you say, I remember saying to a group of executives, their meetings cost a great deal because they flew in and the night before stayed in nice hotels. And these guys didn't stay in Holiday Inns. They stayed in the top of the top. And they also didn't drive Toyota Corollas when they hired a car. They drive beautiful cars.
Sure.
I once asked them, how much does these day-long meetings cost? We did an assessment. I said, the assessment was it cost 2 million rand to have those meetings.
Unbelievable.
And I asked them, I remember one person saying to me, I would be prepared to pay my annual bonus never to have to come to one.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you achieve?
So what do you achieve? Now, if you're going to spend that much money on a meeting, you might as well do it well. And that's got to do with the preparation. Everybody there, nobody comes to meetings unprepared, because you'll embarrass yourself. And if somebody will say to you, is that the most intelligent thing you could say about this? Because remember, people fight.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's such a problem is that so many of the other staff, when they go through right-sizing activities, they know this. They know what those meetings cost. And they know that people are getting paid off because somebody's not managing those expenses for meetings. And that's really sad.
It is sad, and it's a horrible waste of human intellect.
Absolutely. It is. It's very sad.
And I think that if every meeting was based on the fight and unite, we'd have a whole lot better meetings and a whole lot better companies. Yeah.
Because of the preparation.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, Ian, I think that was a very interesting book, and I think most of us can learn something from it in a personal capacity, and if you have an organization to run it. So have you got any last word on it?
Other than it's a worthwhile book that everybody should buy. It's not new, so get hold of it. Read the book. It's probably about 2 or 3 years old, no more than that. It's available on Kindle, probably find in some better bookshops, but it's one of those books that definitely will improve the quality of your personal work. It'll assist you to really get really good at whatever your craft is, and it'll make a difference to your work life.
Oh, it does. It sounds really good. And then, Ian, if I'm right, we're not on again until next year. Is that correct?
So that's correct, yes.
Okay. So, well, we'll see you early in the new year and have a great festive period. I hope you're going to go and have a bit of a rest.
I am indeed. Thank you.
Enjoy it. Thanks again, Ian, as always, for your time. Thanks, Ian. So if you found this useful, please hit the like button, subscribe, follow, share, and more importantly, talk to us. You can complete our book a consultation form on the contact page on our website, and you'll find Ian's details there as well. Thank you for the privilege of your time as always, and good